Hello and welcome. Classy Canadian-born Hollywood star Alexis Smith played opposite some of the world's biggest names, including Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, Cary Grant and Humphrey Bogart. She was labelled early in her career by studio PR as the Dynamite Girl, and her movies included Gentleman Jim, The Constant Nymph, Night and Day and Once Is Not Enough. But in mid-career, Alexis changed direction and showcased her singing and dancing talents, launching a nightclub act in Las Vegas. It led to the lead in the Broadway hit musical Follies and won a Tony Award for her performances. In the early 1980s, she accepted an invitation to attend Madame Imelda Marcos' controversial Manila International Film Festival, where I had the pleasure of sitting down with her. In a brief chat, we covered a lot of topics, including movie censorship, studio workloads, and the impact of McCarthyism on some of her contemporaries.
Alexis, you've managed to keep a career going marvellously on Broadway, doing a lot of stage work. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing in recent years?
Well, the first play I did, it was a musical actually, it was called Follies. It was not the first play, but it was the first thing that I did on Broadway in New York. And it was quite a remarkable show. It was produced and directed by Hal Prince. Stephen Sondheim did the music and the lyrics. Michael Bennett did the choreography. And it won innumerable Tony Awards, and happily I won one. So for my first time out on the big white way to win a Tony was really a very exciting experience for me.
Because at the height of your film career, you'd barely have had a chance, I guess, to get back to stage work at all.
No, I hadn't, and during that period, you know, I remember at one point 11 pictures in 2.5 years, which really didn't give one time to go out for dinner, much less do a play.
What kind of pressure were you working under in those kind of conditions with the studios putting you into films almost all the time with very little chance of making any kind of other decision or not doing it?
Well, one was under contract, of course, and there were, 5 or 6 major studios, and for the most part, one did what one was told, unless you were John Garfield or Olivia de Havilland were constantly on suspension. But it was a wonderful learning period, and that doesn't exist today, where, you know, a young person could get out of college, sign a contract, and it was almost an extension of your education, and there were singing, dancing, acting teachers available to you at the studio, and you could watch great stars at work, and it was a really wonderful, wonderful, formative kind of experience for formative years in the profession.
But was it a period of pressure? I mean, you talk about doing 11 pictures in 2.5 years?
Oh, I was having the best time. You know, you get out of school and have a contract and go to work and you're a movie actress. What better?
And a star, of course.
Well, co-star.
Yeah, but I mean, that comes with it. I mean, it's the recognition, the publicity and everything.
Yes, but it was really, you know, it's as though one were paid for the learning process, which is the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Of those years, I mean, people are always asked their favourite pictures and so on, but what about the people that you worked with? Were there people that you got a real joy with and you look forward to working with in those days?
Most everyone, because actors are awfully nice folk and interesting people because their lives are so varied, and of necessity our tools come from everything around us. So therefore it isn't someone who's been catalogued into one kind of narrow profession, and their interests are usually pretty wide, and I think we're awfully nice folk.
Yeah, well, very easy to get on with and chat to. With the work that you did and took you away eventually into the stage and so on.
Yes.
As things sort of, I suppose, slowed down. Virginia Mayo has said that she finds it difficult now to get roles for older women. Do you feel the same way about the industry today?
No. I mean, do I feel critical in that respect?
Yes.
Well, it goes perhaps beyond that in a way, because I do think we make our own lives, we make our own activity, and I just seem to be constantly busy. And if I weren't busy in the profession, there would be something else that would be challenging that I would find to do. So that isn't a problem with me.
So you said that you always look towards the future. And,
oh, yes.
Right. So taking that into account, how do you feel about movies that are made today as opposed to the supposed good old golden days of Hollywood?
Well, I prefer the films today. I think they're more exciting. I think there's more artistic freedom. I think there's more creativity. And it has become indeed an art form. I think it's been the film industry has been forced into that position because of television, which has taken over the mass entertainment of media. And in the films of the 40s, which so many people have such great affection for, and rightly so, but they're rather predictable and sophomoric in scope. And a lot of them were dreadful. Those who look back to those days with such affection seem to forget the dreadful films. They're equally dreadful films made today, but also on the whole, I think that the industry is far more challenging than it was at that time.
What about the morals of the films that are made today? They are far more explicit in every sense, really.
Yes.
How do you
Well,
feel
so is our existence. The world is far more explicit in every sense than it was in the 40s. We're not as naive as we were in the 30s.
So you're saying that really you're not as critical as some people are of the kind of films that are turned out for the public today?
No, because they reflect our times, and if one's honest about it, that's what's going on out there, and to try and fool yourself that it's not.
So how do you feel about censorship then?
Well, I'm opposed to censorship, really. Now, to what extent this would get into something, in depth, but I think when it inhibits the creative talent, the truly creative talent, I don't mean hardcore pornography, for example, but I think it's very dangerous in every aspect of our lives.
I'm thinking particularly of the political side of things. We've seen a film in just the last couple of years made, which I don't think could possibly have been made 30 years ago. That's Reds by Warren Beatty.
Yes, yes.
And you, of course, have just worked again in recent years with Joseph Losey,
Yes.
who was one of the victims of the McCarthy era. I mean,
Yes, which was a terrible, terrible time. And another man I worked with recently was Marty Ritt, who was also a victim of that.
Yes.
And it took that dreadful man, Mr. McCarthy, took 10 to 15 to 20 years out of creative years out of those people's lives, and really destroyed, certainly, if not their lives as a whole, but a great, great part of it. And that's shocking behavior, and certainly doesn't have anything to do with what we consider in the United States as democracy, and reflect on it with pride. And
what was Hollywood like in those days when the purges were going on? I mean, did you feel that you had to either stand up and say exactly what you felt and what your position was, or did people tend to try to keep it very low-key?
Well, I think, in a sense, the artist, for the most part, is considered, above those political kinds of complications. And a lot of people were lured into that without being aware at all that they would be criticized for it. I mean, I remember having a telegram arrive for some kind of meeting, for the Americans for America Society or something. They all Democratic, Republican Americans for, they always had those kinds of titles. And it was signed by Betty Davis and I think Edward G. Robinson and Ronald Reagan, I think, and was certainly, you look to their credentials, and you would want to be, certainly if you were, a young person in the business, to be a part of this group and these people. And then to find out later that they'd been banned because it was banned and damned because there were communistic elements involved in it, which for the most part was ridiculous. I mean, they were just liberal thinking people, and which was indeed their right.
Did you ever commit yourself in any way at all to either side?
No, because again, I was working a 6-day week and a 12-hour day, and there wasn't time really for that. And I was very young at the time, and was certainly pretty naive politically. I was aware of that. I wasn't dumb. I was naive,
no.
But I.
Yes, I just wonder how much effect that has had on the filmmaking of today when it comes to political films, like Reds and other films that have come out in recent years. I mean, there's certainly been a lot that have dealt with the Vietnam War, which have been critical of the government.
Well, I think it's
indirectly.
very healthy. And if you read our Constitution, that's what it's about. And we just got away from it for a while there, and I think have returned to it. And I think the artist should be allowed freedom, not to abuse.
And one of the films that you did make with Joseph Losey was in France. And have you made any other films at all overseas?
I made one with Joe years ago in England with Dirk Bogart, which was called The Sleeping Tiger. And that's what started this whole conversation, because Joe was working there at that time because he couldn't work in the United States. And he hadn't been back in some 20 years. And he's an extremely patriotic man and has a love for his country, probably greater than many of the people who criticized him at the time.
And who abused it.
Yes.
So since that film, have you made any other feature films, or has most of the work been in
I
the live theatre?
Mostly in the theatre. A few years ago, about 4 years ago, I did a film with Walter Matthau called Casey's Shadow, and Marty Ritt directed that. And Marty's a brilliant director, wonderful director. He used to be an actor and was with the group theatre and has an extraordinary background in theatre and a great filmmaker. And Walter, of course, is a delicious man. And I said I was in love with him, but the line is so long. He really is
wait
lovely.
Anyway.
He really is lovely.
So at the moment, are you returning to America to do any more stage work at all?
Hopefully I am. I'm in the process of developing a property for Broadway, but the economics of the theater now are such that it does take a long time, because it costs something like $3.5 million to produce a musical comedy on Broadway that might close, hopefully not, but could close, in 1 or 2 nights.
And you're actually involved in the development of this?
In this particular piece, yes. It's I'm not being coy, but it really is early to discuss it. And
well, without discussing that, I mean, what is your role? Are you part of the writing?
Well, it's an idea for a musical comedy, and I love working in musical theater because I like to sing and I like to dance, and it's really fun to go to the theater. And no matter how you feel, if it's a matinee day and you're tired and a little grumpy and say, "Oh, I wish I didn't have to do the show this afternoon," when you hear the orchestra, and the music, it's such a lift, and it's a very joyous experience. And so it is an idea for a musical.
And that'll be something that will happen, obviously, in the next 12 to 18 months or so.
Hopefully, yes.
A delightful and charming lady. Her final movie was Martin Scorsese's 1993 film The Age of Innocence, co-starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer and Winona Ryder. Apart from her lengthy movie career, she also had a long list of television credits, including Dallas and The Love Boat. Alexis passed away in June 1993, unfortunately before The Age of Innocence was released.